Hey, it's Keith from Outlaw Speed Shop, and I want to thank you for tuning in. I'm trying something different this week, doing a wheel swap Wednesday. Just something kind of basic, and something I actually haven't done before, so I'm picking this 41 Willys from this Hot Wheels set, and see what I can do with it. As usual, if you like what you see, make sure you subscribe and ring the bell to get notified of all future videos. So yeah, I actually never have done just a wheel swap, and I figured I've got two to three big builds coming up, and I thought this was going to be a good opportunity for me to just do something kind of quick. I did go a little bit further than I wanted to. As you watch towards the end, you can kind of see it's a little bit extra I did. But I have these red line torque thrust wheels that I thought would look pretty cool. There's no axles for them. I just had them in my bin. So obviously step one, this is, as you saw, I took it right out of the box. Just drilling out the rivets with a 3/16 drill bit. I usually go, I have it sped up a little bit, but I usually go to fairly decent clip, and then as I get closer to where I think it's going to pop, I kind of wiggle the drill just a little bit so I can get that head to pop off, and you can see it's like a little bit of a ring once I get to that point. And again, this is where I started speeding up the clip itself, but you'll see that you can kind of almost hear it click, and then you can see right there the little ring that pops off. And once you've got that ring, then you know you're good, and this thing will come right off, no problem. It's funny, I used to, the hardest part of doing a custom when I first started was drilling out and getting these bases separated without screwing it up, and then drilling and tapping. It was like the most nerve-wracking thing for me. And now I do it without even thinking about it. So the more you do something, the more it becomes second nature and very simple. Plastic base, just stick your could be a screwdriver or anything. Just these wheels pop out really easy. And because I'm going to be using axle tubes, I don't really give a crap about the little tabs or the fingers that hold the axles in. The rear has one, and then the front has two, one on each side, closer to the wheels themselves. So I always keep wheels kicking around. These worked out good. I took these wheels off, but the axles, I'll cut them in half. They're perfect for axle tubes. Instead of trying, I do have piano wire that I use. I don't remember the size off the top of my head, but it's perfect for Hot Wheels. But if you got old axles kicking around, just cut them in half. Now you can just use that to stick into your axle tubes, and it's perfect. So I'll use some 1/16. I've got both brass and aluminum rod. Doesn't really matter. I picked the aluminum this time. But it's perfect. The Hot Wheels axles fit in there just the way they're supposed to. So what you do is you're just going to set the tube across where you want it to sit. I always cut it just a tad bigger because I end up cutting it and just being a little short sometimes. So I'd rather grind some off than have to cut it twice. Although I'm half French, so I do things the hard way. 3 times I cut the board. Still too short. So you can use a knife or you can use a cutoff wheel. I'm happen to be using a cutoff wheel this time, and it worked out. Again, it works out well. You're going to get a little bit of a nub sticking out, so you're just going to grind it off or sand it smooth with a piece of sandpaper or a file. I happen to use a file this time just to make it easier. And then what you'll have to do is I have a pick, and I'll use that to open up the end of the tube a little bit because it does tend to peen over the inside just a bit. It makes it difficult to get the axle tube in. So step 1's cut, step 2's sand, step 3 is just open up the hole a little bit. It just makes it easier. You can force it in, but if you're not careful, you can end up pushing too hard and it slips and it goes through your finger, and then you have to go to the emergency room, and then you have to explain to people what you're doing, and it's a shit show. So once the axles are done, as far as cutting the tube, you want to make sure your axles are, how do I put this, so that you can get both ends in without one pushing the other one out. So you want to make sure with the wheels on, the axles don't stick too far out, and you can fit both axles inside the tube. With tubes, you're going to have to groove out the spot, because the original size, you can see I'm using a grinding disc, which is a little bit thicker than the cutoff wheel, and it's the perfect depth or thickness for axle tubes. And the tabs where they sit, plus the little groove that allows the axle to sit flush, all need to be sanded, grooved out a little bit, just to make it so that the axle tube sits flush. It takes a second to do, but you want to make sure you do it even, because if you're a little lower on one side than the other, when you put the axle tube in there, your car will sit all cockeyed, and you don't want to do that. And a lot of cars, you'll find that pieces like this, where the interior actually has a spot that's already grooved for the axle to help hold it in place. You're going to need to widen that just a little bit, otherwise it'll sit funny. To glue your axles in, what I do is I'll groove, and everybody does this, I'll just groove out a little spot on both ends of the axle with my file. It's a triangle file, and I'm using the sharp edge, and it just allows you a little place to put some glue to help keep the wheel in. And then I'll just use a piece of piano wire, or you can use an old axle just to clean it out to make sure everything fits in there smoothly. Again, this is a very, I guess for me, I could say it's simple because I've been doing it so long. But yeah, this really helps. I mean, not every axle you're going to get or set of wheels is going to be the right length. Hot Wheels bases are all different. And a lot of them do work out, but there's a lot that don't. And they're either too short or too long. So this is just a good way to make sure it all fits. Or it can also help you get your stance. If you want it sitting higher in the front or lower, you can manipulate it that way. So once I set it in there, I'm going to put a little dab of glue. That's going to hold it in place. And I'm going to take my toothpick and I'm going to take some of that glue and make sure it gets into the holes that I grooved out with my file to make sure that the axle sits good and gets glued down perfectly. Obviously, I never drilled out the centers and tapped. I just drilled the base apart. I use a 1/16, and then I'll tap with a 256 tap. And what I did is the tap that I had a point on it. I actually used a pair of side cutters, and I cut it flush. And what that does, it allows me to go a little deeper without it breaking. And I've had this one since I started a year ago, and I haven't broken it yet. And obviously I went a little too far with this and decided to go, what else could I do? I decided to do some detailing. I'm not repainting it. And take a look and see what you can do with basic tools. So as you can see, I mean, not every car needs to be, completely repainted if you don't want to. With some basic paints, chrome brush, or Moltov pen, and some black paint, and you can do a lot with just some basic stuff, and it really makes some of these cars and castings pop. Just a little bit of time, a little bit of effort, and you can go get a really good result. Shout out to my patron members real quick: Chris Smith, Joey Williams, Christian Stanaland, Stephen Mance, William Robinson, Devil's Details Diecast, Matchbox Garage, Alvarez's Diecast Customs, and Jim Silva. The ones with the YouTube icons next to them are linked down below. Please check out their channels. They all kick ass. So here's the end result. I think it came out pretty cool for a quickie. It took me an hour to do this. So check it out. As usual, if you like what you see, leave a comment, and I will catch you on the next one.